La Dolce Vita. The sweet life. You know, we hear that phrase and it's like instant images of luxury and maybe a little bit of recklessness.
Yeah, definitely a sense of indulgence.
But like, what does it actually mean to live that sweet life? Well, today we're going to try to find out. We're diving into Federico Fellini's 1960 masterpiece, La Dolce Vita.
Great film.
And guiding us through this deep dive, we've got excerpts from the film's Wikipedia page.
A great source.
Yeah.
Always a great starting point for these deep dives.
It really is, and it gives us all those juicy plot details and analysis and themes.
It's a film that really dives into those big questions about happiness and meaning. I mean, questions that are still so relevant today.
Totally. Okay, so at its core, La Dolce Vita follows a week in the life of Marcello Rubini. He's a journalist in Rome and finds himself caught between the allure of Rome's like glamorous high society.
Right.
But at the same time, this yearning for something more fulfilling, something deeper. But the film doesn't waste any time getting right into the action, and it throws us right into this unforgettable opening scene.
I mean, that helicopter shot, carrying the statue of Jesus over those ancient Roman aqueducts into modern Rome, it's breathtaking.
And it's visually stunning.
A visual masterpiece.
It is. And the symbolism is impossible to miss.
Yeah, it's not subtle.
Right. It's like Fellini is saying, like, hey, buckle up. We're going to explore the sacred and the profane, the clash between, like, the old world and this new world.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the middle of all this grandeur, we meet Marcello. He's in another helicopter. He's supposed to be following the statue, but then immediately gets distracted by this group of beautiful women who are sunbathing on a rooftop.
Classic Marcello.
Yeah, and it kind of tells us everything we need to know about him right from the start.
It does. It hints at that conflict within him.
Yeah.
Right from the get-go. You know, he's attracted to pleasure and distraction, but is that going to stop him from finding that deeper meaning? That sets the stage for his whole journey.
Oh, for sure. So we have this visually stunning opening that really sets the tone, and then we're introduced to this cast of characters who each embody a different aspect of La Dolce Vita.
Oh, yeah.
So in episode 1, Marcello has this chance encounter with Maddalena.
Right.
She's a wealthy, bored heiress. I mean, she's got everything money can buy. But something is clearly missing.
And I think it's important to point out that Maddalena's boredom, it's not just about material wealth.
Yeah.
It speaks to a deeper kind of existential crisis, a feeling of emptiness that's present even in the most privileged parts of Roman society.
Right.
And in a way, it mirrors Marcello's own struggles, even though he is so drawn to her world.
It's such a fascinating contrast, right?
Yeah.
She's tired of La Dolce Vita while he's still completely seduced by it. And their impulsive tryst is a perfect example of that.
For sure.
But then Fellini throws a curveball.
Oh, yeah.
He does. We go from this passionate encounter with Maddalena to this stark reality of Marcello finding his fiancée Emma, who has overdosed.
Wow.
So we go from this passionate encounter to almost a near-death experience.
That juxtaposition is so powerful.
Yeah.
Fellini's highlighting those dual desires within Marcello. The fleeting passion versus committed love.
Yep.
And how that really fuels his inner turmoil.
It's true. And speaking of passionate encounters, in episode 2, we meet Sylvia.
Ah, Sylvia.
She is a glamorous American actress who arrives in Rome and is greeted by this frenzy of paparazzi.
Of course.
And Marcello is instantly captivated.
Yeah.
But Sylvia's arrival isn't just about introducing another love interest.
No, Sylvia. She embodies the allure and the illusion of celebrity culture.
Right.
It's something that Marcello really grapples with throughout the film, this desire for validation recognition, and that's something that always seems just out of reach.
Totally. And nowhere is that more evident than in that iconic scene at the Trevi Fountain. It's dawn. Marcello and Sylvia are wading through the water.
Beautiful scene.
It is. It's visually stunning, but there's this underlying melancholy, isn't there?
Absolutely. And I think Fellini, he uses the Trevi Fountain so masterfully as this symbol of Rome, this symbol of grandeur and history.
Yeah.
To highlight just how fleeting Marcello's encounters are.
Yeah.
You know, as dawn breaks, there's a sense of disillusionment. Like Fellini's saying that these moments, however beautiful they are, they're ultimately transient.
They don't last.
They don't last, and they can't fill that void within him.
They can't fill that void. And it's not just glamorous celebrities that capture Marcello's attention. He also has this intellectual side, which we see through his friendship with Steiner.
Right.
Steiner represents a completely different path for Marcello, one that is focused on intellect and deeper meaning.
Yeah, a stark contrast to that world of paparazzi and parties.
Totally.
Yeah.
But what's so interesting is that Marcello is drawn to both.
He is.
He admires Steiner, yet can't quite escape the pull of that more superficial world.
It's like he's constantly torn.
He is. He's constantly searching, but not sure what he's searching for.
Yeah.
And that search takes a dramatic turn when Marcello covers a story about a supposed miracle.
Oh, yeah.
The sighting of the Madonna by 2 children.
That's a fascinating episode.
Yeah.
Because it really digs into the film's commentary on faith, spectacle, and the exploitation of belief. You have these massive crowds seeking a miracle, desperate for some hope. But the church is skeptical, and the whole situation just spirals out of control.
It's a sharp critique of how easily people can be manipulated by these grand gestures and promises of something more. And amidst this frenzy, Marcello's own father arrives in Rome.
Oh, boy.
Leading to some pretty awkward encounters.
Yeah. The relationship's definitely complex.
It is.
Marcello seems to both crave his father's approval,
Right.
but at the same time be embarrassed by him, particularly when we see them in those nightclub scenes.
Totally. And it's interesting how those nightclubs become this backdrop for all of Marcello's internal struggles.
They do.
You know, we see him with his father, we see him with Maddalena, we see him with all these people who seem lost in their own pursuits of pleasure. And throughout the film, Fellini takes us to all these different parties.
He does.
The aristocrats' Castle Steiner's intellectual gathering, that infamous beach house scene.
Oh, yeah.
They're all visually stunning.
Oh, for sure.
But there's always this underlying sense of unease.
Wouldn't you say?
I would, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Each party reveals another layer of that emptiness that really permeates this world.
Right.
The excess, the boredom,
Yeah.
that frantic search for something more. It's all there.
Yeah.
And it's not just the wealthy elite who are caught in this cycle. Even Steiner, the intellectual, who seems to have rejected that superficiality of La Dolce Vita, ultimately succumbs to despair.
His suicide is such a turning point in the film.
That is.
It really is. It shatters any illusion that intellectual pursuits can really provide an escape from that emptiness that haunts Marcello. And from that point on, Marcello's downward spiral becomes even more pronounced.
Doesn't it?
It does.
So it's like Steiner's death strips away the last vestiges of hope for Marcello.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to resign himself to that hedonistic lifestyle. But there's a desperation to it now.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you think?
I agree. It's as if he's clinging to those distractions, those fleeting moments of pleasure, just to avoid confronting the void within himself.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that brings us to that final episode and that wild party at the beach house.
Right.
Often described as an orgy.
Right.
But it's not exactly a celebration of pleasure, is it?
No, it's not. It's more like a grotesque parody of pleasure.
Yeah.
The partygoers are drunk, they're bored, they're desperate, there's this frenetic energy, but it's devoid of any real joy or connection.
Right.
It's just this frantic and ultimately futile attempt to fill the void.
I agree. And we can't overlook that detail from the Wikipedia excerpt about the presence of homosexual men.
Right.
And Nadia's striptease at the party.
Yeah.
It seems like Fellini's using those details to comment on the shifting social landscape of the time.
I think so. It feels like he's capturing that sense of traditional values breaking down, which leads to this kind of moral disorientation. But Fellini doesn't present it as a simple condemnation.
Yeah.
He approaches these characters with this mix of compassion and irony.
He does.
You know, showing us the human cost of this pursuit of empty pleasure.
Right? They're lost. They're hurting. And they're just grasping for connection in all the wrong places.
And then as that party winds down, we get that final unforgettable image. The grotesque sea monster pulled from the ocean at dawn.
Oh, yeah.
It's open to interpretation, of course.
Of course.
But it's hard not to see it as a symbol of the decay and the corruption that's lurking beneath the surface of this glamorous world.
Right. What do you think about the sea monster? What's its significance in the film as a whole?
I think it's a powerful image.
It is.
And it speaks to the film's central theme of disillusionment with the modern world.
Right.
You know, if we think back to that opening scene with the statue of Jesus,
Right.
there's this juxtaposition of the sacred and the profane
Yeah.
that sets the stage for this idea of something lost, something amiss in the modern world.
Yeah.
And the sea monster embodies that sense of decay,
It does.
that dark underbelly of this pursuit of La Dolce Vita. It represents that emptiness that threatens to consume Marcello despite all of his attempts to find meaning in the world around him.
It does.
Amidst all this darkness, there's Paola,
Paola.
the young waitress that Marcello met earlier in the film. And she seems to represent this kind of innocence, this potential for genuine connection.
Right.
But as we discussed, Marcello is unable to really reach her. He tries to connect with her across the estuary, but their words are lost in the wind.
That scene is so heartbreaking.
It is.
but also so significant.
It is.
Paola embodies a simpler, more authentic way of life, a stark contrast to that chaotic world that Marcello inhabits.
Right.
But he's unable to bridge the gap between those two worlds.
It's a poignant reminder that even when we're faced with a chance for genuine connection, we can be blinded by our own struggles and the allure of the superficial.
Yeah, Fellini doesn't offer any easy answers.
No.
But he leaves us with this lingering question. Can we find true fulfillment in a world that often feels shallow and meaningless?
And that's the brilliance of La Dolce Vita, right?
It is.
It forces us to confront these fundamental questions about life, about meaning, about happiness, and it encourages us to look beyond the surface of things.
It does. It reminds us that the sweet life isn't always what it seems.
Exactly. And even though the film is set in 1960s Rome,
Right.
its themes are universal and they resonate so deeply with us today.
They do.
I think one of the reasons La Dolce Vita continues to captivate audiences is because of its incredible style.
Oh, yeah.
Fellini's visual storytelling is masterful.
It is.
The costumes, the cars, the nightclubs, it all captures a certain aesthetic that became synonymous with La Dolce Vita.
They did.
But it's not just about the visuals, is it?
No, of course not.
Yeah.
Nina Rota's score is absolutely essential to the film's impact.
Right.
The music perfectly captures that blend of melancholy beauty and exuberance.
Yeah.
You know, it underscores the emotional complexities of Marcello's journey and adds another layer of meaning to the visuals.
The music becomes like another character in the film.
It does.
Guiding our emotional experience.
For sure.
And speaking of characters, the performances in La Dolce Vita are truly remarkable.
Oh, they're fantastic.
Marcello Mastroianni as Marcello Rubini is brilliant.
He is.
He perfectly embodies both the charm and the deep-seated cynicism.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about the performances?
Well, Mastroianni delivers such a nuanced performance.
He does.
He makes Marcello relatable even when he's making, those questionable choices.
Right.
And the supporting cast is equally strong. Anita Ekberg as Sylvia is iconic, of course.
Of course.
But I was also struck by Anouk Aimée as Madalena.
Yeah.
She captures that world weariness that lurks beneath the surface of La Dolce Vita.
Right.
And Elaine Cooney's portrayal of Steiner is so heartbreaking.
It is.
He embodies that tragedy of a man who searches for meaning but ultimately finds only despair.
Each performance just adds to the film's richness and complexity.
Yeah.
It's like Fellini has woven this tapestry of characters who represent all these different facets of the human experience.
He has.
Yeah.
And that's what makes La Dolce Vita such a powerful and enduring film.
It does.
It's both deeply personal and incredibly universal. It's about one man's journey.
Yeah.
But it also speaks to something larger about the human condition.
Yeah.
Our shared search for meaning, for connection,
Right.
for a sense of belonging in a world that can often feel chaotic and overwhelming.
We've talked about the plot, the characters, the themes, the visual, the music of La Dolce Vita.
We have.
But a film like this doesn't exist in a vacuum.
No, it doesn't.
It has a ripple effect.
It does.
It influences other filmmakers. It sparks conversations. It makes us think about the world in new ways.
Absolutely.
So for our final ad, let's delve into the legacy of La Dolce Vita and how its impact continues to be felt even today.
Let's do it.
We spent the last part really getting into the world of La Dolce Vita. But now I'm curious, how did this film change the landscape of cinema? It's not just a great story. It feels like it broke the mold in a lot of ways.
You're right, La Dolce Vita was a game changer.
Yeah.
Not just for Italian cinema, but for filmmaking worldwide. Fellini moved away from those traditional linear narratives.
Right.
And embraced a more episodic, almost dreamlike approach.
And I remember you mentioned earlier how he wasn't so focused on strict character development.
Right.
But instead, we get these encounters, these moments that build on each other to create this complex portrait of Marcello and the world he inhabits.
Exactly. It was a bold move that really paved the way for so many filmmakers who came after him. You see echoes of La Dolce Vita in the works of directors like Martin Scorsese, Woody Allen, even Sofia Coppola.
Oh.
That blend of realism and surrealism, the focus on atmosphere and mood, the exploration of alienation in these urban settings. I mean, Fellini's fingerprints are all over it.
So he didn't just tell a great story, he opened up a whole new way of telling stories.
Precisely. And it wasn't just about aesthetics. The themes that Fellini explored in La Dolce Vita are timeless. The search for meaning, the disillusionment with the modern world, the allure and emptiness of fame and pleasure. These are all things that resonate with audiences today. even more so than when the film was first released.
It's so strange, isn't it? Here we are over 60 years later, and the film feels more relevant than ever.
I agree.
You know, our world is obsessed with celebrity culture, with social media, this constant pressure to portray this like perfect life. It's like we're living in a Fellini film.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
Think about those paparazzi in the film.
Oh, yeah.
Relentless, intrusive, desperate to capture that perfect shot, no matter the cost.
Right.
Does that sound familiar?
It's like Fellini had a crystal ball.
Right.
He captured something about the nature of fame and media that was just emerging then
Yeah.
and has become even more intense now.
And what's interesting is he doesn't just point fingers. He presents this world with a mix of satire, compassion, and even beauty. He makes us confront these uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world we've created without offering any easy answers.
And maybe that's why La Dolce Vita continues to spark debate and discussion all these years later, you know? Those lingering questions. What does that sea monster symbolize? What's the significance of Paola's smile at the end? They stay with you.
They do. It's the mark of a truly great work of art.
Right.
It doesn't just entertain, it provokes.
Yeah.
It makes you think.
Yeah.
It makes you feel. And it stays with you long after the experience is over.
So if someone was watching La Dolce Vita for the first time, what would you want them to take away from it?
I think La Dolce Vita is a reminder that the sweet life, the life we often chase after, isn't always what it seems.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cautionary tale about the emptiness that can come from chasing those fleeting pleasures, and a call to search for something deeper, something more meaningful.
Right. And even though it's set in this specific time and place, it feels like it speaks to something so universal about the human experience.
It does.
This longing for connection, for purpose, for something that makes life feel truly worthwhile.
Exactly. It reminds us that despite the chaos and the allure of the superficial, there's still beauty to be found in the world, in those quiet moments of connection and reflection. Just like Paola standing on the beach, watching the waves roll in, with that enigmatic smile on her face.
Such a powerful image to end on. So
Yeah.
there you have it, our deep dive into La Dolce Vita.
I feel like we covered a lot.
We did. We explored the plot, the characters, the themes, the visuals, and even its lasting impact on cinema. What stayed with you? What will you take away from this journey into Fellini's world?
Well, I hope our conversation has inspired you to either revisit this masterpiece or experience it for the first time. And who knows, maybe you'll find a little bit of La Dolce Vita in your own life.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and as always, thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. Ciao. We spent the last two parts really getting into the world of La Dolce Vita. But now I'm curious, how did this film change the landscape of cinema? It's not just a great story. It feels like it broke the mold in a lot of ways.
Oh, you're right. It
Yeah.
really did. La Dolce Vita was a game changer, not
Yeah.
just for Italian cinema, but for filmmaking as a whole. Fellini moved away from those traditional linear narratives.
Right.
And he embraced this more episodic, almost dreamlike approach to storytelling.
Yeah. And I remember you mentioned earlier how he wasn't so focused on strict character development.
Right.
You know, instead we get these encounters, these moments that build on each other and create this complex portrait of Marcello and the world that he inhabits.
Exactly. It was a bold move.
Yeah.
And, it paved the way for so many filmmakers who came after him. You can see echoes of La Dolce Vita in the works of directors like Martin Scorsese, Woody Allen, even Sofia Coppola. That blends of realism and surrealism, the focus on atmosphere and mood, that exploration of alienation in urban settings. I mean, Fellini's fingerprints are all over it.
So he didn't just tell a great story, he opened up a whole new way of telling stories.
Precisely. And it wasn't just about aesthetics either. The themes that Fellini explored in La Dolce Vita are timeless. The search for meaning, the disillusionment with the modern world, the allure and emptiness of fame and pleasure. These are all things that resonate with audiences today, maybe even more so than when the film was first released.
It's crazy to think about, isn't it? Here we are over 60 years later, and the film feels more relevant than ever. Our world is obsessed with celebrity culture, social media, this constant pressure to portray the perfect life.
Right.
It's like we're living in a Fellini film.
You're not wrong. Think about those paparazzi in the film. Relentless, intrusive cavity, desperate to capture that perfect shot, no matter the cost.
Oh, yeah.
Sound familiar?
It's like Fellini had a crystal ball. He captured something about the nature of fame and media that was just emerging then, and it's become even more intense now.
Totally.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that he doesn't just point fingers. He presents this world with a mix of satire, compassion, and even beauty. He makes us confront these uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world we've created, but without offering any easy answers.
And maybe that's why La Dolce Vita continues to spark debate and discussion all these years later,
Yeah.
Those lingering questions like, what does the sea monster symbolize? What's the significance of Paola's smile at the end? They stay with you long after the film is over.
They do. It's a sign of a truly great work of art.
Mhm.
You know, it doesn't just entertain. It provokes, it makes you think, it makes you feel, and it stays with you long after the experience is over.
Yeah, it does. So if someone was watching La Dolce Vita for the first time, what would you want them to take away from it?
I think La Dolce Vita is a reminder that this sweet life, that life that we're often chasing after, isn't always what it seems. It's a cautionary tale about the emptiness that can come from chasing those fleeting pleasures and a call to search for something deeper, something more meaningful.
Yeah, and even though it's set in this very specific time and place, it feels like it speaks to something so universal about the human experience, This longing for connection, for purpose, for something that makes life feel truly worthwhile.
Exactly. It reminds us that despite all the chaos and the allure of the superficial, there's still beauty to be found in the world. In those quiet moments of connection and reflection, just like Paula, standing on the beach watching the waves roll in with that enigmatic smile on her face.
Such a powerful image to end on. So there you have it, our deep dive into La Dolce Vita.
We did it.
We did. We explored the plot, the characters, the themes, the visuals, and even its lasting impact on cinema. What will you take away from this journey into Fellini's world?
Well, I hope our conversation has inspired you to either revisit this masterpiece or experience it for the first time. And who knows, maybe you'll find a little bit of La Dolce Vita in your own life.
Beautiful. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and as always, thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. Ciao!